Now, Honda generally makes excellent engines, they make excellent small cars, but their vans, not so much. And I know you might say, Scotty, they sell a lot of vans. Chrysler sold a whole bunch of Dodge Caravans and Plymouth Voyagers, and they were rolling piles of crap. But they had a lot of cup holders for the soccer moms, so they liked them. Now, on the positive side, most Honda Odyssey vans are not rolling piles of junk like the Chrysler minivans were. But as of 2022, Honda's no longer going to be making Honda Odyssey vans, and it says something. They got a big V6 engine, lots of power, but unlike their chief competitor, the Toyota Sienna van, they do not run virtually forever without problems. Throughout history, Honda Odyssey vans have some real serious problems. We'll begin with the most serious, the automatic transmission. Now, these are powerful V6 engines, but they're hooked up to a rather poorly made automatic transmission. Matter of fact, they were so bad that Honda had to replace thousands of them free for their customers, extended the warranty period. I had quite a few customers with them that did get free transmissions put in. But I've had even more customers with them that didn't get them fixed free. They said, oh, they're too many miles, it's out of warranty. They knew they built them wrong. They would just break up internally. Bad automatic transmission. The newer ones are better than the older ones to some extent, yes. With the history of problems like that, if you compare them to a Toyota Sienna that historically has almost no transmission failures at all, it would make no sense to buy one of these instead of a Toyota Sienna. Now, granted, a base Odyssey is about $2,500 less than a Toyota Sienna, $32,000 versus $34,500, whatever, but the Toyota is so much better made and it's going to last so much longer. You would be a fool to buy a Honda Odyssey van brand new. But it's not just the transmission. For quite a few years, they had problems with the back camshaft inside the engine on this V6 engine. Something about the thrust washer, something was wrong, and the cam started wobbling back and forth. You got to rebuild the engine for that. Costs an awful lot of money. Hardly anybody knows how to rebuild them correctly these days. You want a vehicle like that? Or do you want a Toyota Sienna that has a V6 engine that's virtually indestructible? This is a 2014. It's still got a rubber timing belt. Old technology. Now, 7 years before this 2014 Honda Odyssey was made, 7 whole years before, Toyota switched their V6 engine from a timing belt to a metal timing chain. They didn't update it fast enough. And realized this in 2020. These things still had timing belts, and they are interference engines. The belt breaks, the valves hit the pistons. You have to change the belt regularly. If you don't, you will destroy the engine. But I guess their theory is, well, we're not going to be making them after 2022, so why redesign everything? Bad move, Honda. Basically, as I said earlier, Honda makes great smaller cars. They're not a big car company. Van's a big vehicle, and these Odysseys have too many historical problems. When there's something like a Toyota Sienna van competed against it, they get blown out of the water by anybody who really understands how things last, how long they'll go. Sure, they got a lot of comforts, there's no arguing that. And they actually ride better than the Toyota vans, but they do not hold up like them. This particular one was recently purchased as a used vehicle and only has 100,000 miles on it. And so far, it served its owners well. Still got the original engine and transmission. But you're not going to get hundreds of thousands of miles of trouble-free driving out of an Odyssey like you would with a Sienna. So if you're buying it new and pay $2,500 less than a Sienna, and you're the type of person that's happy spending that kind of money and getting 100,000 trouble-free miles driving out of a vehicle, you'll probably be completely content. Now, this one's in here just for an inspection. He gets shaking and pulling when he's going 60. So let's check the front end. Now realize that the first thing you do if you got shaking or pulling, check the tire pressure of all tires. This one's 34.0. Let's check the left front. That's 33.0. It ain't gonna make that much difference, but we'll put another PSI in just to make it even. Now we'll check the left rear. 34.0. And the right rear. 35.0. So we'll let a pound out. Now it's 34. Now 1 pound too high in the back, 1 pound too low in the front. That's not really gonna affect anything. Let's jack it up. Look at the tires and suspension. Now we'll put the emergency brake on and put it in neutral so we can spin the tires. Now we can spin them and examine them. First thing we're going to do is look for lumps. Looks pretty straightforward. I don't see any out around this. And the tread itself looks decent. Worn, but not overly worn. It's a Continental Eco Plus. So let's go to the other side and bring our mat. Around we go. These are a different type of tire. You always want the same tire on each side. They're not worn. I don't see any particular lumps. And when I spin it here, I don't see it being out around on the side. But you can see the outside here is somewhat badly worn. I would change both tires with the same brand. You can even see here little chunks coming out of the tire. This is a two-wheel drive van, so you can get away with buying just front tires. I would buy 2 new front tires and get them balanced, and that will solve the guy's problem. There's no wear on the front end when I pull on the tires. They don't pull one way or the other. But with the new tires, I would also suggest a front end alignment, because the little bit of pulling is probably because it's out of alignment. Doesn't surprise me, because I can see a lot of hits on the rim. You hit things, you're going to bend the alignment. But if you want to be on the cheap side, put 2 new tires on the front and see what happens. If it no longer pulls, that means that this worn out tire was making it pull, which would make total sense because it's pulling to the right, and this is the worn out tire that's not the same as the other tire. So that makes total sense. It would pull to the bad tire. So maybe just a front tire, a couple of front tires, and you wouldn't even need it aligned. Road test it. If it doesn't pull anymore, it doesn't need an alignment. Why throw away money if you don't have to? But still, I would not buy a Honda Odyssey van. And after 2022, you won't be able to, because they're not going to make them anymore. You listen to me, you probably won't buy one, but at least now you know what to look for. Let's say you're looking at one that's a few years old. If the transmission shakes or it shudders when you accelerate, don't buy it. That means the transmission is going out. This one's working perfectly fine. Somewhat newer one. It's not a really old one. But the fact they're still using rubber timing belts on an interference engine, it's kind of dumb if you ask me. Now, lately people have been worried about oil dilution problems occurring in Hondas. I'm going to explain the whole situation here so you can understand what's really going on. Now, oil dilution occurs when too much pressure is created inside the engine, then raw gasoline gets by the piston rings and gets into the engine oil and dilutes the engine oil with gasoline. And as you can imagine, gasoline that's diluted with engine oil, it becomes lighter. It does not lubricate correctly. It can cause damage to the piston rings, the crankshaft bearings, the timing chain. It's a very bad thing. And in Hondas, the main reason it occurs is because of too much excess pressure. The biggest problem I had were in the 1.5 liter 4-cylinder engines, because they had both gasoline direct injection that pumps a whole bunch of extra pressure into the cylinder, sometimes over 1,000 psi, where the old fuel injection system was only like 50, 60 psi, and combines that with the spinning turbocharger. Yeah, not one this big. This is just for demonstration purposes, but the exhaust gases spin the turbocharger and ram more air into the engine, which increases the pressure inside the engine even more. As I've been telling people for years, I'm not a fan of GDI turbocharged fuel injection system. Ford's had them for a while in their EcoBoost. They have history of failures, the turbocharged failures. The engines wear out faster. The more you strain an engine with extra pressure, the shorter the lifespan of the engine. That's just a fact. And of course, this early wearing out is even worse for a smaller engine. Take a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder Honda engine. That's a smaller engine. Now, on this 2014, that is not a problem, because Honda doesn't have a turbocharger. This is off an old race car. It does have an Earth Dreams Technology iVTEC engine, but it's a 2.4 liter engine. There it is. It's a bigger engine, of course, than a 1.5, but, and this is a crucial but here, this has gasoline direct injection with extra pressure, but no turbocharger. And interestingly enough, Honda's first big turbocharged 4-cylinder cars, they came in their Acura. Same company, just different name for the fancy cars, right? And those turbocharged 4-cylinder engines, they didn't have an oil dilution problem at all. I got a customer with one of those Acuras, got 190,000 miles, runs fine, doesn't burn any oil. It's just turbocharged. And in this case of this 2014 Honda Accord, it is a 2.4 liter engine that has gasoline direct injection, and it doesn't have oil burning or oil dilution problems. It only has GDI. It doesn't have GDI and a turbocharger. So the Honda engine seemed to work fine with either gasoline direct injection or turbocharging, but when they combined the two, it seemed to be too much pressure and it caused oil dilution. Now, the engineers at Honda aren't idiots, so I'm sure they'll figure a way to change the software so they won't have oil dilution problems. But as it stands today, if you want to buy one of these Hondas, realize that the 2.4 liter Earth Dreams engine with direct injection but no turbocharger are great engines. Have no qualm at buying one of these. The gasoline direct engine seems to cause less wear than a turbocharger anyways. I am not a fan of turbochargers because they put more power out of smaller engines, but they definitely lower the lifespan. If you ask any engineer, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll say, you take a Honda engine that doesn't have a turbocharger, they regularly go 300,000-400,000 miles. But the ones that have turbochargers on them, they don't go 300,000 or 400,000. They claim you'll probably get 160 or 180 before the engine starts wearing out. Here you just have to use common sense. Low pressure, good. High pressure, bad, over the long run. Look at people, the doctors are always saying, your blood pressure's too high, you gotta bring it down. Well, if you got GDI and a turbocharger on a modern engine, especially a small one like a 1.5 to some of them are 1.0 liter 4-cylinder engines, all that extra pressure, you can't lower it. That's how the machine works. You can't give it a pill to lower its pressure like you can with people, or tell the car to change its diet. It's still going to be running on gasoline. Now, back in the day, a few decades ago, most turbocharged cars would say must use premium fuel. The extra pressure, they said it needed premium fuel. Some of the modern ones say you can run it on whatever you want, but take Scotty's advice on this one. You got a turbocharged car, and when you accelerate hard, you hear it pinging. And if you put high test gas in, the expensive premium gas, and it stops pinging, my advice is stick to the high test gas, because not only does the pinging hurt the engine with engine knock, it will also make the engine less efficient, and you can end up having more oil dilution from that. So even if they say, well, you can run on anything you want, the computers are theoretically set up that way, but if they wear or get carbon buildup and they ping with a turbo when you accelerate, my advice is up it to the premium gas, or at least try the mid-range one. Anything that stops the pinging is perfectly fine. Now don't get me wrong, Honda makes great engines. They make more internal combustion engines than any other company on the planet. But if you want the longest life possible, don't get one that is both turbocharged and gasoline direct injected as they presently stand. But let's say you already bought a GDI turbocharged engine car, or you don't want to listen to Scotty. Well, listen to this. This is the new GF6B oil. It's 0W16. When you turn it back, that explains the whole thing here. Ilsac GF6B. Now, you don't have to buy Valvoline. All companies make it these days. I'm just showing Valvoline because that's what they sold at Walmart. But this GF6B oil was made to stop the extra wear of turbocharged GDI engines. And if I ever owned a turbocharged GDI engine, which I doubt I ever will, I wouldn't even go by the listings. I would still use this stuff and change it every 5,000 miles. I would not go 10,000 miles. Oil is pretty cheap compared to a $4,000 or $5,000 or more engine. I would still change it every 5,000 miles on those just to keep any possibility of oil dilution or wear down as low as possible. But this Honda, it only has GDI. You can hear it now. It has 80,000 miles on it, and other than a little clattering, meaning the valves need adjustment, it's running smooth as can be. No shaking at all. Like I said, it's got 80,000 miles on it, and when we put it in gear, no shaking, smooth as can be. And as you can see here, it says to use 0W20 oil. Now you can still use the GF6 oil. The GF6 oil consists of two types, GF6A and GF6B. The B only comes in 0W16, it's only for those engines. You can get GF6A oil for engines like this, and I would advise doing it, especially since it has GDI injection. Just make sure that when you get the GF6A oil, it's the same weight as it says, 020. They do make it in 020. As I say, you can buy whatever brand you want. You don't have to buy Valvoline. Sure, it's a good oil, but there's plenty of good oils. You just want to look at the back and make sure it says GF6A, because the only ones that say GF6B are the 0W16, so you won't get confused. If your engine says 0W16, you use that. If not, you use the normal weight. Just check the back of the can, make sure it says GF6A. That means it's the new standard and it's the best oil possible for your engine. An 06 Honda Pilot, it's not running right. See under the hood, or I should say after we take the stupid beauty cover off. Go ahead over there for the time being. Got 6 new ignition coils and spark plugs, but it's still not running right. As we can see inside, it's an 06, so you know, it's 16 years old. And it does have 173,000 miles on it. So let's start it up. Now it's got the lights for the tire pressure monitoring. Those are all worn out by now. That we don't care about. But it's got kind of a shaky idle drive. We can feel it kind of misfiring. We can feel the steering wheel jiggling a little. So let's get out the scan tool. Served the family well. They've had it for a long time, but they don't like the misfiring, and the coils didn't fix it. Now there are no trouble codes, so I'm getting out the big boy here. We'll take that off. We'll put it on the real scan tool. Here it comes. Realize when there's no trouble codes, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's all kinds of data. I can feel it misfiring. The data's going to show us what's going on. Don't rely on just generic trouble codes. That's only the beginning. I see many guys bring cars in here and they'll say, well, they told me I can't find anything wrong. Check the engine light is not. No, that's not where you end. That's only where you begin. Nothing beats a real scan tool that has all kinds of data. It automatically reads the VIN code. If you're not using a scan tool that reads the VIN, you're not getting all that much data. You got a scan tool that just plugs in and reads data. The VIN is very specific. Everything's going to be correct on the information. It's not guessing with some generic thing. It's specific. So when you push diagnosis, you're getting a real diagnosis. And when we do a smart scan, look at the stuff it's testing out. All kinds of stuff. As it's scanning, realize you're probably going to get data that you don't care about. We don't care about the tire pressure monitoring system not working. That's not going to make the car jump at idle and run a little bit for us. We're looking at about the data that affects that. So once the scan's done, we can see what's normal, what's abnormal. The only abnormal thing here so far is the tire pressure monitoring system, so we don't care about that at all. Being a smart tool, and this is an old car, not a smart, you see a lot of it's gray. That just means it's not equipped with that stuff. The only red is the tire pressure monitoring system that we don't care about, and the computer fuel injection system. So we'll go to the fuel injection system. Here's all these codes. Misfire number 1. Misfire number 2, misfire number 3, misfire number 4, misfire number 5, misfire number 6, random misfire, the camshaft, crankshaft signal incorrect correlation, and then it just keeps doing all the misfires again. So what does this tell me? All the cylinder misfire, and then you're going to get random if they're all, because it's kind of random, right? As far as I'm concerned, the most important one is this code. Camshaft, crankshaft signal incorrect correlation. Look at the freeze frame data. The vehicle was going 0 miles an hour when the code tripped. Now when you're just idling and not moving, everything on the car has to be perfect, or you're going to feel it more. You feel the misfiring. There's one thing that often does that on these older Hondas. This is the V6 engine. It's old school. It has a rubber timing belt. Hondas used rubber timing belts on these engines for a long time. Probably too long. The belts get old, they stretch. This baby has 173,000 miles on it, and there's no indication that the timing belt has ever been changed. Since the timing belt's probably never been changed, it's going to stretch. As it stretches, all the data gets weird because it's no longer in the right position. So let's look at the idling timing. Now here we go. You can see 4.5, 7, 9, 8.5, 10, 12, all over the place. With the worn timing belt or chain, the belt's moving around. The timing changes all the time because it's not correlated right. That's why it's got that code for crankshaft, camshaft correlation is wrong, because it's confused. And this is going to show up the most at idle because it's idling. It can bounce around more. So let's do another test. Let's rev up the engine to say 2,000 RPM and look at the advance. Notice it doesn't bounce around much at all. That hit the nail on the head. When you go faster, it spins faster, it's tighter. The timing isn't bouncing anymore. The codes trip when it's just idling, not when it's going at a fast speed. This baby needs a timing belt if you want it to run correctly. See, when I have it revved up, it's staying real stationary. Well, I keep moving my foot, not bouncing all over the place. Just a tiny ½ a degree difference. But in an attempt to make it run better, we're going to clear the crank pattern. This machine shows us what to do. Start the engine. Then turn the ignition switch off. Then turn the ignition switch on and wait 30 seconds. Oh, I just hate waiting for that 30 seconds. We're in such a hurry these days. It even annoys me. And now that's cleared the pattern, we have to do the relearning. So we ensure it's in park neutral, put the parking brake on, okay. I'll start the engine, okay. Communicating, turn the ignition switch off, turn the ignition switch on, start the engine, and wait 30 seconds. Seems to be an awful lot of waiting with this. On relearn, let's take it for a road test. Well, I can already feel it shaking a lot less. As we step on the gas, Seems to be going quite well now. Now it is running a lot better by compensating for the wear with the computer recorrelating stuff. I would, if I owned this car, definitely change the timing belt as soon as possible. Not to chance it. If it breaks, goodbye engine, goodbye vehicle when it's as old as this thing with all that mileage on it. Never chance an old timing belt on a Honda V6 engine. The newer ones have timing chains, but a lot of them, still going, have rubber timing belts. Make sure you change them about every 100,000 miles or so you don't ruin your vehicle over a belt that costs 50 bucks. Mine's just gonna cost a lot more than that if you don't do it yourself and pay a mechanic, but it'll save the engine. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.